This week on London Real, we have the Scottish actor James Cosmo from Braveheart, Trainspotting, and Game of Thrones.
I'm an actor to my bones. I may have been in Hollywood-type films, but I'm not a Hollywood actor. Some people are willing to die for something. We've got a beautiful country there, and it should be for the enjoyment of everyone in Scotland. I just started crying, and I thought, I've got to do this. It goes right to his broken heart. I think it's the best thing I've ever done. I'm working. I'm an actor. What's not to like? Sometimes you get something that can just make people think.
London Real presents James Cosmo, The Pyramid Texts.
Strive to be happy, and don't let anything get in the way of that.
I am bringing you the very final episode of London Real for 2014. You know, it's strange, part of me never even thought we would be here. I had no idea we would be filming for 3 solid years, but yes, it's happened. This has been a pretty incredible year for me and for the show. It's funny, I was in New York City for Christmas of last year, and I sat down with myself and took a long, hard look at things and said, should we do another year? And I just had one major thought, and that was that I was such a better person and in so many levels than I was the previous year that, you know, how could I not do this? So I decided to commit for another year of the unknown, of the other year of completely having no idea, you know, what was going on, if this was a business, etc. And I'm just so thankful that I did. So thanks to you guys for pushing me, because you guys really do push me, because I'm forced to come up with a better product and better guests, new formats, new shows like Silicon Reel. And so it really is coming right back to you guys. So thanks so much for making me do these crazy things and getting through those questions I ask myself sometimes, like, Brian, what the fuck are you doing? And things like that. So let's get on with the guest on this show. He is a very special man, and I do believe this is going to be one of our very best shows from 2014. And this man is named James Cosmo. He is a Scotsman through and through. He really is. And you would have known him most likely, the first time you might have seen him, especially if you're an American, would have been in the movie Braveheart, produced and directed by Mel Gibson. And James is the older man who was the father of one of the fighters, and he fought himself in the battles. And there was a classic scene where I think he had an arrow removed from his shoulder, and he got so angry and he punched one of the guys that I think it pulled it out of his shoulder. And he had this really important role in that movie, and it's just burned in the back of my mind. And so when I got the opportunity to interview James, I took it right away. You know, on top of all that, he is the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch on the HBO series Game of Thrones. And let's be honest, it doesn't get more gangster than that. And you know, James has been around for a long time in many different capacities, but his most important role is the one that I saw him in recently. And I was lucky to be invited to the premiere of a movie called The Pyramid Texts, which was written by Jeff Thompson, longtime and repeat guest on London Real. You know, Jeff is a BAFTA award-winning writer. He's had some really pivotal books like Watch My Back, and Jeff has gone from being a really hard doorman in North England, you know, where things aren't very pretty always on some of the late night scenes, to being a self-defense expert, you know, to now really going full circle and being a really introspective, a really peaceful guy. And he's someone that can quote ancient texts at the drop of a hat. And he wrote this movie for James, and it's just fascinating. The more I learn about this collaboration, the more it fascinates me even more. And these two work together on what is effectively a 90-minute monologue performed in Repton's Boxing Gym, which is really an institution here in London in the East End. You would have seen it in the movie Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels by Guy Ritchie. If you haven't seen that movie, then just shut this video off right now, because you don't deserve to watch this anymore. It's a London classic. And in that movie, the gangsters are playing poker in a boxing gym. And that is Repton's. And this whole movie was shot in black and white in that gym, where the character that James plays is recounting stories and thoughts about his life into a video camera, funny enough, just like the one that I'm holding here. And he's telling his son life lessons and reflecting on things, and it's a really powerful movie and message. And if you've ever done any fighting, then it'll really relate to you, because it has a lot of themes with martial arts. And you know, it's something that's true about Jeff Thompson, and both true about James Cosmo, is that I think the reason people relate to him, especially perhaps guys like you and guys like me, is that these are the ultimate tough guys. You know, these are the guys that are hard men that have been there. And so when they allow themselves to be emotional, when they allow themselves to feel pain and to be honest about their fears and their hopes and their sadnesses, I think as tough guys sometimes, we allow ourselves to listen to that. And it's very hard to overstate the importance of that. And I think that's why Jeff has been such a powerful and popular guest on London Real. Over 150,000 views of his various episodes and clips. And I think it's because we see in Jeff someone who we are and who we also want to be. We want to be vulnerable, but we want to be tough. And so that's why this movie really spoke to me. Again, it's called The Pyramid Texts. There's a link below if you want to find out more about the movie. It was directed by the Shemazian brothers, who are amazing filmmakers. This is their first full-length exercise. Before that, they had award-winning short films, and I just love the way it was made. You know, I don't go to many movies these days. I get a little bit grumpy about that, and Hollywood doesn't always do it for me, but this movie was clean and pure in message and pure in presentation, not overdone. It wasn't overacted, it wasn't overwrit, and it wasn't overfilmed. And it was a beautiful combination of the three. So I was so happy to talk to James. He had some very distinct views about Scottish independence, about the Hollywood film system, about how he likes to not be a part of that, and it just doesn't get more honest or more real than him. So I was really lucky to sit down with him, and I really hope that you will go see this film. Hopefully they will have a theatrical release here in the UK in the first part of next year, and then at awards season, I think they're a shoe-in for a number of awards. So please tweet out to James and to Jeff if you enjoy this, and if you want to go see the film. I'm just always happy to promote great art on this show, not to mention talk to such cool dudes as James. So there you go. I'm going to give you a few more reflections on my year with you guys, London Real. But I just want to say a big shout out to the guys that have made this show happen for this entire calendar year, that have believed in us when we were much smaller. And those are the guys at Bulletproof. They make a fantastic coffee that's free of molds and toxins. I drink it every day. I just had a cup this morning. And what you do is you mix it up with grass-fed butter, Kerry Gold in the house, and some brain octane oil, which is a special kind of MCT oil, and you mix that up in a frothy brew. I have a 100% acceptance and a love rate for it for all guests on London Real, which is a statistical anomaly, so it must be good. Check that out as well. I've also been consuming their Unfair Advantage every morning, 1 ampule. Really like that stuff, and they have so many more products. The Bulletproof Diet Book is out. Go get your copy. It's going to revolutionize the way we think about food. I'm a big fan of what Dave writes. So it's always keeping it real here with the police. Yeah, get yourself a copy of that. Change your diet up for 2015. Let's make some big changes. You know, I've been pushing a lot of people close to me lately. I think I've been channeling Dan Pena. So I've been really asking the people in my life to think about stepping their games up next year. So hopefully you will step your game up as well, and we'll probably be having just a very select number of people that I'll be communicating with more in 2015. I think we're going to call it the Inner Circle, and I just want you and everyone around me to just take their game to the next level, to be the best you, because if you're not doing that, then I think you're just wasting your time, and then you're wasting my time. So I'll be hitting that theme a lot next year, and yeah, it won't always be nice to hear, but I will be telling you what I think, and I'm always welcome for your criticism. My 10-year-old daughter, she gives me the best criticism. She criticized my speech at Thanksgiving dinner. She said I had too many ums and I wasn't well prepared. So, respect for that, respect. And there you go. I'm just going to finish off this pre-roll by saying thanks again to everyone. It's been an incredible year. I was looking at the pictures on my wall. I had pictures with Neil deGrasse Tyson, pictures with Stitch, the celebrity cut man in the MMA world, and pictures with Dan Pena, of course, Guthrie Castle. That was a big moment in my life, a big change for me that week. And we had just been released the episode I had with Max Kaiser on the Kaiser Report. I had a great chat with Max. It was a lot of fun. So please, you can click on here below and you'll go to a link and watch that video. I talked about London Real, being a banker, new media, Silicon Reel, our tech show where technology is disrupting London, and it was just a lot of fun to hang out with Max. So it's been a crazy year, bookended by some wonderful episodes, and again, I can't say this enough, I really have you guys to think about, to thank for this. So thanks for watching, always appreciate, and if you're having Christmas dinner or out on New Year's Eve, tell your friends about London Real, Silicon Reel. Please subscribe on our YouTube channel. We're trying to get up to 100,000 subscribers. Tweet us out, share us on Facebook, all the love, we really appreciate it. And now I'm going to leave you with really one of a kind. I don't think they make them like this anymore. I really don't. And that is the Scottish actor, Mr. James Cosmo. This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Mr. James Cosmo, who is a Scottish actor known for his film appearances in Highlander, Braveheart, The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Trainspotting and Troy, and for your television appearances as the Irish priest in Sons of Anarchy, and as Lord Commander of the Night's Watch in the HBO series Game of Thrones.
Yep.
James, I met you exactly 1 week ago during the premiere for your new film, The Pyramid Texts, which is a 98-minute black and white monologue about an old boxer recording his loves, regrets, and life lessons to a video camera for his estranged son. It was filmed at Repton's Boxing Gym, which is an institution in London's East End and Bethnal Green. You would have seen that place in Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels where they were playing poker. I was absolutely blown away by this film. I was invited by Jeff Thompson, who was a guest of ours twice on this show, who really resonates with our audience. They really love Jeff. We've had 100,000 plus views from his shows alone on YouTube, and YouTube is democratic. They either watch it or they don't.
Absolutely.
So it's like that. And I was really blown away. I've been a little bit jaded with mainstream cinema. I'm a bit old, I think. I don't like going to movies so much. Sometimes the Hollywood factor really strikes me. And I find that not only am I watching an explosion that's in CGI, but I'm getting a score and a tear-jerking moment that's been scripted for me, and I'm being told how to feel about the film. And with your film, it just felt like there were no egos involved. There was Jeff's writing, there was your acting, there was the Shemazian brothers making it come to the picture, and it just felt like a pure piece of art.
Yeah, we went right back to basics, shot in black and white, one man talking, minimal cinematographic somersaults, very few, just a very plain, simple storytelling. That's what film is about. I agree with you that the vast majority of modern filmmaking it's a cynical exercise. It's as you say, we're being CGI'd to death. The kids are watching stuff that I think it's going to die eventually. I think people are going to be overfaced by it and think, what is this? What, another franchise film, please?
Right.
And that's why I was so really, really privileged to be part of this, because it does bring it back to the days of Eisenstein, just telling stories, that's it.
Right, like pure cinema, pure cinema. I just want to finish out. The Shemazian brothers were known for award-winning short films. This is their first feature film. And I didn't know later that Jeff kind of wrote this, bespokely wrote this for you. So I want to dive into that much more. It was a great night. The former boxer and commentator Barry McGuigan was there. Gareth Davies from The Telegraph, who's been our guest here as well, was there. And it was a huge event. I was expecting a long film. 98 minutes is a long time, and when it ended, I was surprised. So anyways, I want to talk all about that. James, welcome to London Real.
Thank you so much, Brian. It's a pleasure to be here.
It seemed like a really big night for you. Everyone had just so many emotions, but I just want to know a little bit about you, before we get into the film. How does a tough guy like you become an actor in the first place?
Well, my dad was an actor.
Right.
But I had a strange sort of childhood because he was a jobbing actor, as they called it. So my mother and sister and I were living in a tenement in Glasgow, in Scotland. And he was away in the theatre and doing different stuff, you know. So it was a strange sort of life. You know, my first job when I left school when I was 15 was in the shipbreakers on Clydeside, when they used to, you know, they built ships and they broke them down for scrap. And, you know, I was there for about 18 months or so, you know. And so I sort of drifted into acting. I hitchhiked down to see my father when I was 17, and I met a director through him, and she gave me a small part in a TV thing. And then I went off and I did all sorts of things, you know, as young actors do, you know, because you got to survive. You just, you know, you got to earn a living. So I did everything and anything, but always came back to acting. So I didn't have any formal training or, you know, didn't do drama school, anything like that. I just learnt from my peers, and over the years, hopefully improved a little bit.
Was your choice of name just to get away from your father's Copeland name? And
yeah, well, I could have been James Copeland Jr.
Right.
Or someone else. So my mother said, use your grandmother's middle name.
Okay.
Which was Cosmo. And you always
right.
do what your mother tells you. So that was it. End of story.
And we've seen actors do that, like obviously, you know, Charlie Sheen, and then Martin Sheen, and then Emilio Estevez chose to use their previous name. And, you know, you see kind of people trying to get away from their legacies. Angelina Jolie, you know, from her father and that kind of thing. So when did you make your first break as an actor where you were like, I want to do this full time? Because you said you kind of experimented with acting and then other jobs.
Yeah, I guess it was... probably in my early... Oh, that's my phone.
I usually tell people to turn them off. That was the one time I forgot. Should we just let it go?
Yeah, let it go.
Okay.
That'll stop in a minute.
It's a very real London real moment.
Yeah.
So you were saying...
yeah, I did a film called The Battle of Britain, and I loved it. I had a great time. It was a big movie.
That is a big movie.
You know, and I met all these film stars. You know, I was just playing one of the fighter pilots, but met all these guys, and I thought, Jesus, this is a great life, you know. And at that time, you know, in the late 60s or whatever it was, London was the most exciting place you could be on the planet. Okay. It was just great, you know. It was all happening, and I thought, this is where I want to be. And so that's what I did.
What made it the exciting place to be? Like, why did you feel that way?
Everything was new. The King's Road was like, you know, now it's a you know, pastiche of the King's Road, but then it was full of Malcolm McLaren opening shops, and they just there was a wonderful sort of anarchy about the place. You know, it was fresh and new and exciting. You know, great films being made, great theatre, great television. It was a wonderful time, you know. And I remember working at the BBC in the early days, and I remember now that you could be maybe offered a part in a movie or commercial TV, but if someone said it's a play for the BBC, you sort of dropped everything and said, yeah, I'm going to be there, because that was the level of quality that the BBC was producing. It was they were so brave in those days, because I remember the BBC club at White City was at lunchtime. I think it was just full of actors and directors and writers drinking and arguing and talking and behaving badly and producing fabulous television. I think it's a gym now.
A gym.
I rest my case.
Okay. All right. Well said with that. Did you go on to do a lot of work for the BBC?
Yeah, I worked for the BBC on and off a lot, you know. It's not the organisation that it used to be, but I still have a soft spot for it, you know.
Right.
I still think it's the idea of the BBC is a wonderful, wonderful idea, you know. Television for the people. I think it's lost its way hugely, but I still, in my heart, I still think, it's the BBC, you know.
Did your father give you any lessons about acting, or did he kind of let you get on with it?
He just said, think it, be it. That's it. Stanislavski wrote that great big book.
Yeah.
He needn't have bothered. He could have just thought, think it, be it.
Think it, be it.
Boom. Yeah.
Did you have acting training or anything like Stanislavski or any of the schools?
No, I didn't. No, I watched other people and found my own way, you know. And maybe my style of acting is different to everyone else's or whatever. But I never regretted not going to drama school. Never ever.
Right.
Never.
You know, you're a very warm and personal guy, but obviously you play a lot of roles that have darkness in them and have anger in them, whether it's, you know, in the pyramid texts or, you know, in Braveheart or in Game of Thrones. Where does that come from? Is that something that's deep inside, that's deep from your past, or is that acting?
I think that an actor finds the character within himself. Well, you know, I don't think it can be something that comes from external sources. I think you've got to find whatever it is, be it good or bad or really, really dark. We all have that in us, and it's just accessing that, you know. And sometimes that's not a very pleasant experience, but I think that's the way to do it. And I think you can tell sometimes when actors, when it's all plastered on and it's not coming from in there, and if it doesn't come from in there, it's not real, and people know.
Right. And so you don't reach into a specific dark memory or dark this or dark that necessarily to get to where you need to be.
No, I've played some really dark, you know, like dreadful serial killers and things, and you find some sort of connection there and try to understand. And it's, as I say, sometimes it's not particularly pleasant, you know, but it's within us all. All these emotions are within us all. You know, we just deny it, you know, and be warm and personable. But we've all got that there, all of us.
Can you tell me about the experience making Braveheart? Was that a big break for you, or was that
huge?
It was huge. Okay.
Yeah.
How did that come to fruition? Was it something in retrospect that you barely got, or was always going to happen? And then what was it like, you know, filming some of that in Scotland? You know.
Well, I've told this story a couple of times, but I had just been with my wife for a couple of years, and we had a baby who's now 21, and I hadn't been working that much, so Annie, my wife, she worked at the BBC, and so she was keeping us. And I had gone up, I'd got a phone call from my agent at that time to go and meet Mel Gibson in some hotel in London about a movie he might be making. So I went along, and it was a funny sort of meeting, because Mel's a really very warm and funny sort of guy. You feel very much at home as soon as you meet him. And we sat down, and he said, hey, Jimmy, he said, what do you think of this music? What do you think? There's some French guy, you know, for this film. And he played me this sort of Aeolian harp sort of stuff, you know. And I said, that's really very, very interesting. That's nice, yeah. And he said, oh, great. And we just chatted for like 5 minutes. And then I left. And, you know, you meet people for films all the time, you know. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work, you know. So 3 months after, it's gone, it's finished. And Annie and I were sitting on a Saturday night, and our treat of the week, this is how broke we were, our treat of the week was to get a curry. And we'd have a curry and watch the late night movie or whatever. Baby's in the bed next to us, and we're having the curry. 20 to 11, the phone rings. I thought, geez, I'm just about to eat my curry. The phone rings, like that one. And so I said to Annie, listen, just leave it. And she said, no. I said, well, listen, I don't want to speak to anyone. Just say I've gone to bed or whatever, and I'll call them in the morning. So she answered the phone, and she said, yeah. Hello, yeah. Uh-huh. She said, would you hang on? I said, what are you doing? I said, I'm in bed. She said, it's Mel Gibson. I said, oh, don't be so silly. I thought it was some buddy of mine, you know, just having a laugh. And I answered the phone and said, hello? Hey, Jimmy, it's Mel. I said, yeah. Who is it? It was Mel Gibson. And suddenly the penny really dropped, and I went, oh, jeez. And he said, I've been watching some of your show reel, and the show you did, Roughnecks, where you have this fight with this guy. He said, fucking great, man. He said, you want to come and play Campbell? I said, the father? He said, yeah. Do you want to come and play? I said, you bet, Mel. He said, okay, see you next week. Hung up, that was it, boom. It was a lovely feeling.
That's amazing. Were you surprised that he mentioned Campbell? Were you thinking a different role?
No. I just remember the characters when I read the breakdown, And it was interesting because I was, I played the young guy to begin with at the beginning of the film, and then they shaved my head and did all that stuff, and I played the older guy.
Right.
And
that character is really remembered so much by people because, especially in a Hollywood movie, you don't see kind of an older character at that time with that kind of grit and anger and physically violent scenes. And so it's like you remember Mel Gibson and you remember you from that movie. It was
really, that's lovely.
It was big because it was so unique. And did you know? I guess did you know it was going to be that big going in? Did you know the movie was going to be that big going in?
I remember talking with Randall Wallace because we filmed about a month in Scotland, all the big mountain stuff and the really magical Highlands, the West Highlands, and then we went to Ireland to film the rest of the film.
Right, the fight sequences.
Yeah, for about three and a half months.
Okay.
And I remember we stayed in just outside Dublin in Dalkey, but I was one night I was in the pub with Randall Wallace, the writer of the screenplay, and I said, Randall, I think this is going to have a huge effect politically on Scotland. And he said, nah, get out of here. I said, I really, really do, and it did, and it still has. I really think. Obviously, the Scottish nationalist movement has a much longer history than that. But I think people in Scotland, it really resonated with them. Not that it's a historically accurate, it's not a documentary, it's a romanticized idea, but it really, really resonated with the people in Scotland. But not only that, it resonated with English people, and because it's about freedom. It's not racist. It's not against the English or against anyone else. It's about oppression and people striving for freedom. And I think that's why it had such an effect around the world. That people said,
And why do you think it resonated? Was it because the details and the acting and all of the thought put into it, or was it the themes?
I think it was the theme. I think it was the fact that some people are willing to die for something greater than them, the freedom of their country, freedom from oppression, and that, it's happening now, and it will continue to happen. That people will fight against oppression. You're seeing it in Hong Kong just now. You're seeing it all over the world. People saying, no, you can't do this to us.
Do you get associated sometime with the Scottish independence movement because of that film? Is it still brought up and still thought about because it was a big picture for that? Was it?
Oh yeah, I mean when I have the pleasure of going back up to Scotland, it's still big in people's memory, and it's interesting, Brian, because it's a film that for whatever reason it seems to retain its freshness. Doesn't tire like so many films now. After a year you've seen it twice. Jeez, you can watch Braveheart again and again and again, and I have young kids to me coming up saying, "Oh man, Braveheart," I think, wow. And I think maybe one of the things is that we had a tiny amount of CGI. It was a joke. It was nothing. Mostly we had 3,500 extras doing it. Right. And I think that really did add to it, wow,
Yeah, it feels big, it feels genuine, the corners weren't cut in the shooting of that, right?
Oh, no.
They went all in, and you can really tell. And all the little details of the storyline. Mel is obviously superbly charismatic in that film, and then the performances are big, including yours. Did you have latitude on how you were going to approach that? Anything there? I mean, you obviously had to make that character your own.
Well, Mel left it very much to to the actors to bring their characters onto the set, you know. And what he did do, and I think it's because he's such a fine actor himself, that he understood the acting process. He understood the anxieties and the process. So what he did was he freed everyone up. He said, there you go, you know, it's all yours, you know. Do what you want with it, you know, really, you know,
right.
Enjoy it. So everyone did, and it really worked.
And that's the beauty of having a director that's an actor.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
always the case? I mean, you've done countless films, television series. I mean, can you pretty much say unequivocally that when the director is an actor, that the acting's better, or the feeling on the set is, you know, more relaxed or more independent for each
I
actor?
haven't worked with that many directors who have been actors.
Okay.
Every single time I've worked with them, the set has been superb.
Okay.
Because they understand.
Right, and that comes out on the screen.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
I believe it. Yeah. Okay, so the 6 months after Braveheart, your phone is ringing off the hook. Does it completely change the trajectory of your career, or it does? Okay. So what happened next?
I got offered a part in Emma, which is just ridiculous. You know, a Jane Austen film. Me? A Jane Austen film? And Doug McGrath, who directed it, I remember I went in to meet him, and I thought, I'm not a Regency type guy, you know, like playing Emma's father. And I went in to meet Doug, and all he wanted to talk about was Braveheart. And we had this long conversation about the making of Braveheart. And then I left, and they said, oh, they'd love you to do Emma. It just shows the ridiculous mindset that Hollywood have. You know, if you've been in a successful movie, then we'll put you in another movie because you might bring some of that glitter that you had. It's just ludicrous.
Right, okay, but you were happy to ride that wave.
I was happy to an extent, yeah, but I'll never wear tights again.
Okay.
I wore them once, that was it.
Okay. Did you ever worry about getting typecast or about having to play that role over and over again in Braveheart, or not?
In a way, I suppose every actor is typecast by their physicality, you know. I am a big guy. I was very, very fit in those days. I was a big lump. I could ride really well. I could do the fencing really well. So you fall into those sort of parts. And that's great. I'm working. I'm an actor. What's not to like, you know?
Right.
And so I got a chance to, you know, to go to really interesting places and do things. And in films that I felt really comfortable with, you know?
And then Hollywood came calling. Did you spend some time in LA? I guess it's every British actor's, you know, calling at some point when they get big enough that they have to go and embrace the Hollywood process and all of that. What is your relationship like with California? How was that, if you kind of take a bird's eye view on it now?
It's really sunny. It's really sunny. I don't know. I'm not a Hollywood actor. I would never. I may have been in Hollywood type films, but I'm not a Hollywood actor. I'm much more at home doing work that I love, you know, and I can appreciate the lure of that, especially for younger actors. Sure, who wouldn't love it, you know? I'll give you an example. When we were doing Game of Thrones, it came to season 3, which is where I exited the series.
Right.
But HBO very kindly and generously said, we're going to have a premiere at the Chinese Theatre and then a big do at the Roosevelt, I think it is, across the road from them. We're going to send you 2 business class tickets and you stay at the Four Seasons for 4 days, 5 days, whatever you want. Would you come? So I said, yeah, sure. So I took my wife didn't want to go. She's not into that sort of thing at all. So I said to my oldest boy, Ethan, do you want to come? He said, yeah, absolutely, you know. And so we flew out, and I, as I think I told you before the interview, I rented a little place in Torrance, which is like in between Long Beach and LA. It's a very blue-collar area. And my fishing buddy was coming down from Washington State, and I thought, you know what? We went to the Four Seasons. There's a lovely suite, and geez, you couldn't open a door without somebody opening it for you, and there's big bowls of fruit everywhere. And I thought, you know what? I said to Ethan, I said, Ethan, there's card for the hotel, right, for the 4 days. Enjoy yourself. And I went back to my little place with Bo, and he had the best 4 days he's ever had.
Okay, so that is your relationship with Hollywood in a nutshell.
Yeah, you got it, yeah.
Okay, fair enough. You brought up Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Has that been a big career changer for you? Or since you've had so many big films, I guess, do you just kind of take it in stride along with all the other roles that you've had? Or was this a big
It's always a joy to be asked to do stuff, and prestigious stuff. And I hadn't heard of Game of Thrones. I hadn't read. I'm not a great fiction reader particularly.
Right, me neither.
So I hadn't heard of George Martin, who obviously sells tens of millions of books. But my agents emailed me through a couple of sides for this character, Lord Mormont, with a rough sort of outline of the story and things. And I remember reading it, and I thought, usually, and they said, oh, it's for tomorrow. It's it's like 2 pages. They said, but it's okay. You can just hold it out a camera and just read it. It's fine, But I read it, and I thought it was his telling the new recruits to the Night Watch what the Night Watch stood for, and what they should expect, and what they had to become, no matter what they'd been before. And I thought it was a really interesting speech. David Benioff, who wrote it, although he's a great producer now, he's no slouch as a writer either.
Right, he's written some great books himself.
He wrote Troy and everything else. Yeah. Terrific. So I really worked at it that night, really, really worked at it. And went in the next day, put it on tape just with a casting director's assistant. Just did 2 takes, boom. 2 pages. Thought, hey, that's pretty good.
Single camera, is that how
Single
those work?
camera,
Okay.
yeah, no stops. And then I went away. And the next thing I knew, as far as I can remember, I got an email from George Martin. And that's not usually the process. Usually it's you're down to the last 3, and then all that stuff going up to meet the network heads and all that stuff, But
Again, some of your favorite things to do.
George is powerful enough he decided, and I'm sure David and Dan, the 2 producers, had a bit in it. So I was very privileged, and it was a great show to work on, real groundbreaker, hugely successful. But I do remember doing ADR after the first season out in LA, and I said to David, do you think you're going to get a second season? And he said, oh man, we're hoping. Wow.
I know it's fascinating. Even the top shows on HBO, you're not sure if it's going to be taken again, or if it's games.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's gamesmanship by the networks or anything, but you just don't know. So
yeah.
These are these big hits and these big, but obviously it costs a lot of money to produce, and
yeah.
But you doing the ADR in Hollywood? Were you thinking, okay, this is going to be big, or you just never know?
I just didn't know.
Okay.
I thought maybe they've overstepped the mark. They spent so much money on this. Maybe it'll just do okay, and people just won't get it.
Right.
And
television hadn't made a big play at that point. I mean, this is 3-4 years ago, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
There hadn't been these original series that had done huge breakouts.
Not spending this kind of money.
Right.
I mean, it really was like they were running. They run 3 units, Brian. And every film unit, one in Morocco, one in Croatia, one in Iceland or whatever. Every unit's like a big film unit. It's a massive. Even the logistics of it are mind-boggling. How they can put all this together. And you think, if you do one series, if that doesn't blow it off the charts, they're not going to spend the money on it.
Right.
But it did.
Because it's, like you said, a lot of money to run those 3 units for that many episodes.
Oh, man, absolutely.
Talk to me about the filming. I know you spent some very, very cold days in Iceland.
Yeah.
I listened to an interview where you were saying there was only 4 hours of daylight, so you have to block it in the dark and then shoot it while the daylight and try to remain warm.
Yeah.
What's it like?
I really enjoyed it. I found it really empowering because you sort of felt, if people watch the show, beyond the wall is this, wilderness with all these dreadful things out there. And when you go out, when you step out of your lovely warm trailer or whatever it is, and your beard starts to crackle with the ice, and you can see your breath coming out, and you feel the cold, even though you're wearing thermals underneath your costume, you can feel the cold seeping into you. It does sort of add that extra something, that this is a really dangerous place. And I found it really helpful,
And how many of your scenes are out there in the wilderness, and how many are on sound stages and inside?
Most of them were out there.
Really?
Although when they were doing the sort of press kit stuff that they do, you know, they have a little camera and they do little interviews while you're filming, you know. And the first time they were out there, you know, they said, "So what's it like filming in the cold, you know, in Iceland?" And I said, "Well, obviously, you know, here we are in LA, and there's a green screen behind me." And they said, no, don't say that, they'll believe it, you know.
And were you sad when you got the script that said that you were going to have this fantastic scene where you die? Were you like, I'm going to miss the next couple seasons? How do you feel about that as an actor?
No, I always knew, because a friend of mine had, when he knew that I was playing Lord Mormont, my old fishing buddy, Bo, who hardly reads a newspaper, but he stuck in and he read all the books, and he said, book 3, you're gone, man. Right. You know, we can go fishing. So I always knew that the character was going to go, but that's fine. You know, 3 seasons is great. You know, and in a way, after that, you're sort of reprising the same character. You know, and I think the wonderful thing about my profession is that you get to visit so many different characters.
Right.
You know,
it's interesting to see things like Breaking Bad and Mad Men and Boardwalk Empire, you know, wrapping up, you know, and it seems like that 5-6 season mark is the time where those narratives kind of, they play out, you know, and it's interesting to see how, as humans, you know, we've seen enough from that character, and we kind of need someone new, you know.
Yeah. I funny about Breaking Bad, because I really think that take the money out of the show, you know, take away how much money they're going to make from another season. I think that could have been 3 fabulous seasons. I don't think it should have gone to 5.
Okay.
That's my belief. I think, you know, there was so much good in there, but sometimes you thought, I'm having to stick with this because I love the idea so much, you know. But yeah, it's interesting that people just start to flag, you know.
Yeah, we're kind of in uncharted territory with some of these original series. Like, we just don't know maybe how long to milk it and how long not to, because there's no precedent. They're obviously making tons of money, and they're big productions. So it's interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how they play out. You know.
And also, Game of Thrones has that really clever idea of they kill people off all the time, introduce new characters coming in. So that does bring a freshness to it, you know, that, you know, you're not following the same heroes all the time. He's dead. Good guy, bad guy, you know, so people are interested all the time.
Right, I didn't think about that, because, with Breaking Bad, you have the main character, Walter. With Mad Men, you have, you know, Draper. You have, with Boardwalk Empire, you know, you really are following one character, a lot of the time. Let me ask you about one of the television show, and then I want to ask you about Scottish cinema real quick. Sons of Anarchy, what's it like to do something like that? Again, does that bring you a whole new audience of people that love you in America? like that you didn't already have an audience anyways? I mean, what was that like, being part of that? Because that's really big now. Big fame, you know, Courtney Love, the singer, is on there now, and Marilyn Manson, and
it's amazing.
Amazing, the talent going through there.
It's extraordinary, because it doesn't feel like a big show when you're doing it, you know? Like, it's this bunch of guys with lots of tattoos, and when they phoned up and said, do you want to do a season of Sons of Anarchy? I thought, I mean, I don't ride a motorbike, but I would have learned. You know, I thought, yes, Harley Davidson. I'm sure they'd give everyone a Harley Davidson. I end up playing an Irish priest, you know. If they were going to give me anything, they'd have given me a second-hand Prius, you know. But I loved it, and became very good friends with Ron Perlman and Charlie Hunnam, you know, who's an English boy who's gone out there and just knocked him dead. You know, he's doing so well. And I just did a film with Ron earlier on this year called Moonwalkers out in Belgium. So we had a lovely time out there. But I loved it. It was great. Yeah.
Preference, television or movies for you? Why is that?
There is a magic about movies. There is just something about it. Even though everything now is digitized, I just love the feeling of a movie set, you know. I used to love, when I was a young actor, I used to love the sound of the camera, you know, that when they turn over, you think, better get it right.
Right.
And the big arc lamps, where they used to have these carbon rods that they put in, and when they fired them up, And you know, if it was like a war movie or something, the smell of cordite and things, it was magical. Magical place to work.
Yeah, there's still something special about film. There's an American writer named Bret Easton Ellis who wrote American Psycho and Less Than Zero, and he is constantly kind of complaining about television because he says ultimately these television series, maybe Game of Thrones aside, but they still have this kind of a television arc where the people come on, they say their lines, they give the information, you move to the next scene. And he said it's a film that really can capture a feel and a look and really a piece of art more so than a regular occurring series where you have the characters and you have the information. And so he's constantly.
I couldn't agree more.
You would agree with that.
Yeah, and also the advances that they've made in the technology of filmmaking, you know, has been great in one area, and not so great in the others. You know, like I remember somebody telling me in the early days, Spielberg used to edit his film on a moviola, even though he could do it on a computer, because that physical process of just winding the celluloid gave a director pace, you know, that it wasn't beep, 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 cut, 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 you know. It was, you let the camera stay, let the camera tell the story, you know, and that seems to have gone to a great extent.
Right. Yeah, everything changes the process. The technology, the financing, all of those things change the ultimate product, don't they? Yeah, in some way. Tell me a bit about Scottish cinema. You were in Trainspotting. Well, we had Irving Welsh in here about a year ago talking about that. It was, if he said a funny story, he's like, that was the first book I wrote. So he's like, in a way, I am the wrong author to speak to because most authors work for 20 years before anyone reads their work. That was like his first big thing. Obviously, it was a play in Scotland before, then it became a film. What did that do to the Scottish film industry? How did you get involved, and what was it like being on set with Danny Boyle?
I'd worked with Danny before, when he was head of drama for BBC Northern Ireland. We went over and did a a really, really good film for TV called The Night Watch. But it was the painting, The Night Watch.
Okay, right.
About mercenaries waiting in Amsterdam to go on a job to Africa. And I just adored working with him. I really, really adored it. He still is a hero of mine. He's just a superb filmmaker.
Why? What makes him that?
He has a humility and a commonality with everyone on the set, yet has a very clear, firm idea of where he's going, but it's never put you under any pressure or whatever. It's a joy to work with him. It really is. And his decency and humanity it's not fake, it's real. He's a very, very genuine man, you know. I've got a lot of time for Danny.
I hear he's first on the set, last to leave kind of guy.
I'm sure, okay. Yeah.
And so he grabbed you, he chose you to be in Trainspotting. Did you know it was going to happen? Did you know it was going to be the birth of so many young actors' careers?
No.
Okay.
No idea. No idea. Although when I saw the movie, I thought, you know, everyone was wonderful in it, and I thought Bobby Carlyle was stellar. Absolutely stellar. It was a showy part, but he took it with both hands. He made such a great job of it. Yeah, it was wonderful. And then so many of the guys have gone on to do fantastic things, you know, just amazing.
Yeah, it was big. And what is it about Scottish cinema? Did that push Scottish cinema in a certain way? It was obviously global recognition. It was a real piece that was seen everywhere, wasn't it?
Yeah. I don't know if it had a huge effect on film production in Scotland, Brian. I'm not sure about that. I really don't know. I think things may get a lot better very shortly with the Scottish Parliament getting more revenue, control of tax revenue.
Right.
And I'm sure Nicola Sturgeon's going to be looking at the arts and making it more appealing for filmmakers to to work in Scotland.
Okay. I was in Scotland about a month ago. I was up in Guthrie Castle, which is near Arbroath on the east side. And I didn't realize there was, only 4.5 million people in Scotland.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you could tell us, why is there such charm with Scotland? Why does Scotland have a brand that's worldwide? Why do people love the Scottish characters that you portray? And why is it just kind of like this, I don't know if it's an underdog piece, but just everyone is vested in seeing these Scottish characters succeed, or they want to watch them. Why does that happen?
I think it probably comes from the diaspora of Scots, and that diaspora was came from a tragic background, the Highland clearances, when after the 45 rebellion, a lot of the chieftains who had supported the Hanoverian cause were given title to the land, which they had controlled the land, but they didn't have legal title to it. They were the chieftains of the clan. They were there for the service of the people of the clan. And then after a few generations, they went to England, they were educated, and there was a separation between the landowners and the people that lived there, and the run rig system of farming and things, which was very simplistic and basic and community based. But they found that they could make a lot more money having sheep instead of people. So the people were literally driven from the land. The houses were burnt, the thatch were burnt, and people were driven onto the shores, and they went to America, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, families broken up, men sold themselves into indentured servitude in America just to survive, but that diaspora, and it's in the Scottish nature, I think, to, the hard-working, usually honest, decent people, and quite adventurous, so they made the very best of it, and I think people admired those people, although they came from a very tragic incident that happened, which has never been addressed. Still, Scotland, there was a very famous theatre company called 784, and they did some fabulous work. They had a wonderful play called The Cheviot, the Stag, and the Black Oil. All the Cheviot sheep, the stag, the Victorian myth of the Highlands and all that, and then the oil, the 3 times that Scotland has been, got the wrong end of the stick, And 784 was named because 7% of the population owned 84% of the land. There's something wrong here, And it was really interesting that Nicola Sturgeon was talking either today or yesterday that they're going to have a look at land reform in Scotland. These huge estates where, owned by absentee landlords, people that go shooting deer, and yet we have a civil population who, a great many of them, don't live in very nice places, We've got a beautiful country there, and it should be for the enjoyment of everyone in Scotland, not just a privileged few. That's something that really, and I'm sure people will if they listen to this thing, they'd really disagree with me and say, but all these things bring in so much money. It's absolute nonsense. That there's a wonderful book by a guy called Monbiot, who I think he writes for The Guardian sometimes. I can't remember his first name, but he wrote a wonderful book called Feral, which is talking about returning the land in the right way back to nature, and how by doing that we could change the economy of Scotland in an extraordinary way, by things like reintroducing wolf packs, alpha predators. It sounds ridiculous, but it's the most wonderful, exciting idea, and the tourism and it would just be astonishing. I don't think it's going to happen, but I urge people to read the book. It's the most fascinating book I've read in a long time.
You're very passionate about this.
I am, yes. I'm passionate about the people of Scotland not owning Scotland. Yeah.
And did we make progress in the recent vote for independence? Is that a step? Did that really upset you? Was it a setback? How did you feel about that?
I couldn't vote because I don't own a home in Scotland. In a way, I think it was probably the best of all results, in so much that it was a further step towards a truly independent country. And these powers that they've been given, I think they're a bedrock that Scotland can build on and consolidate, and then we will move on further, you know, because I do believe that I've met Alex Salmon a couple of times, and I'm an admirer of the man, and I do believe that Scotland had a chance and will again have a chance to be a more compassionate and caring society. You know, I think a fresh start is a wonderful thing, you know, to say, listen, we've been part of this union, but now it's time within the European Union to say, no, the people of Scotland have a different agenda. We are a different people. We're much more socialist with a small s, you know. We want to be a more compassionate people, you know. We want to be more like Norway or the Scandinavian countries, you know. Let's concentrate on making the people that live in Scotland. Let's make their lives better. That's important to me.
These sound like some of the same issues, even in Braveheart, you know. But I don't know these stories you talk about, and I like to think I'm pretty well read, but I don't know some of these things that you're talking about because these things haven't really been talked about to the world, have they?
Not really. No. It's you're talking about the clearances and all that sort of thing. Yeah. I mean, John Preble wrote a wonderful book called The Highland Clearances, which is extraordinary and heartbreaking. You know, there's a really interesting story, Brian, that Dvorak, when he wrote the New World Symphony, he took a tune, and it was a spiritual. It was a slave's spiritual called "Going Home." Da da dee da da dee da dee. That one. But musicologists found that came from a Gaelic tune called the Old Woman's Lament, and that the genesis of that tune came from someone who was born in the Highlands, who was evicted from their home, went to America and became an indentured servant, 7 years, and they were given the money so they could give the money to their family so their wife and children could eat. And then he said, for 7 years, I'm a slave. And so he had that tune, he or she had that tune, and it was passed on to the black people that they slept with and worked with. And then it became Going Home. Wow. So that's really interesting. It's quite beautiful and tragic in a way.
Wow. Yeah, these stories need to be told in some way.
Yeah.
And we need to find out, I don't know if that way is going to be in a film or something, but they need to be told.
Maybe one day. Yeah.
And I live in London. I'm 4 hours from Edinburgh by train, and I don't know these stories. And it's fascinating when you compare Scotland with the Nordic countries like Iceland, Norway, Sweden, and they are a completely different sense of government. They are much more socialist. Yeah. And if you look at the geography, it would make sense that there's those tendencies. And
absolutely.
Something I don't think about. Also, you know, England is heavily weighted to London, and London is a major financial center, and you know it's driven by a lot of those economic interests here. I used to be part of that business. 20% of the tax revenues come from the banking industry, and it's pulled south, isn't it? The whole UK is pulled
absolutely,
you know, deep south into London.
Absolutely, so, yeah. It's almost a city-state.
Right, in that sense. Well, thank you for telling us about this. Let's talk about this film I saw a week ago, called The Pyramid Texts.
Yeah.
It's you are the lead in this. Have you been the lead in a film before or in something like this before?
I've played leads on TV, and I haven't done much stage stuff because I don't enjoy it particularly. Sort of playing the major male character. But this is the first time I've ever done anything like that. I mean, I don't think there's many actors that have been privileged enough to be told, well, here it is, let's make a movie,
right.
You know, and it's only you.
Right.
I say only you, there's another guy in it, but he doesn't speak.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's true. What was the genesis of the pyramid texts? How long did you know Jeff? Obviously, it sounds like Jeff wrote it for you. Was it that simple of a story? And how did it involve? And how long did this take?
Well, I'll tell you, Brian. Through my agent, Olivia, she phoned me and said, Jeff Thompson and the Shemasian brothers, who were with the agency, would like to meet you to talk about a movie. And so I went along, and they were talking about, it was another movie, it was a different movie that they wanted to make. And I met Jeff for the first time, and I didn't know who Jeff was. Okay. I now know he's a very, very famous man.
This is about 2 years ago you
in
met
that
him?
world. Yeah, it'd be about that, 2.5 years ago.
Okay.
And I met this very spiritual, quiet, gentle, nothing like you see in that my son showed me. What?
I know. It's very jarring at first.
It is.
Right.
But you see, I just met this really gentle guy,
right.
You know, and drinking his green tea or whatever. Gee. But he said, I've written so many things for you. I said, I'm sorry, but he said, everything I've written has had you in it. I've written that character for you, but you've been busy or been away or whatever. And I thought it was so complimentary, you know. I was really, really touched by it. And I said, that's really lovely of you. And I said, well, whatever happens with this, we'll have lunch sometime. So we met for lunch, and he said, well, be lovely to work with you. And I said, yeah, we should do something together. And I said, maybe something we could like take on the road, or like I had this idea of maybe doing a tour of universities in America, like a one-man show with Jeff, if he had written it, and we could just have a good time, going around for a couple of months, do some universities
right.
in the evening, and then talk to the students. And I love talking about acting to young people. It's one of the joys of it, just their enthusiasm and their interest and their freshness.
But you don't like the stage, you said?
I don't like the stage, no.
Why not?
Because they can get to you. They could climb over and kill you if you're that. No. It just. I was brought up making movies.
Okay.
So it's just something different.
Okay, but you thought maybe you would take this on the show, which means you would be performing
a really
it
intimate
live.
thing,
Okay,
like,
right.
Like audiences of 500 students, maybe,
Okay.
That'd be lovely.
Okay.
And so we talked, and we had lunch, but then suddenly it was the evening, and we're still talking. And then Jeff told me about his life, and I told Jeff about my life, and really intimate stuff. And sometimes you meet someone and there's just an instance of rapport, and Jeff is a very open person, he's very easy to speak to, because he listens. And anyway, that was lovely. About 8 months later, 6 months or a year, whatever, this script gets emailed to me, and it's called The Pyramid Texts by Jeff Thompson. Jeff says, what do you think? And I started to read it. I read 30 pages, couldn't go on. I just started crying. Just crying and crying. And I thought, well, that's it. I ain't doing that. And then a few days later, I went back and I got past that 30 pages and I got to whatever it was, 60 pages. Couldn't read it anymore. Couldn't. Nah. And then the next time I read the whole thing, and I thought, I've got to do this. I've just got to. And that was it. I said to Jeff, yeah, let's do this. And it was terrifying, absolutely terrifying, because it was going places that I really, really didn't want to go. Really didn't want to go. But I knew I had to do it. It was an opportunity of a lifetime, really. For an actor, and I'm an actor, I tell people I can't bear it sometimes, and that's true, but I'm an actor to my bones. It's in my genes, that's what I am. I can't be anything else. I'm useless at everything else. I'm not a bad fly fisherman, but not as good as some. But it's the only thing I can do. And I knew I had to do it. I had to. So it came like a very slow steam train through the tunnel towards me. It took months to come towards me. And I get more and more frightened as it came. You know, I thought, oh, maybe I'll catch a cold or something. I can't do it. And I would look at the script and read it through and think, Jesus, I'm never going to do that, you know. But eventually it came and walked into Repton Boys Club and we kicked off.
Why did it scare you so much? Because it's biographical in a way?
Not so much biographical, but I think it's about the deepest parts of a man's persona, of a real man. And it's the part that many very physical men don't want to explore. They don't want to go there, you know. And I'm not saying that I'm a big tough guy, I'm not. But it was to find, like I was saying earlier, it was finding that person inside of you, that person with so much pain. I didn't want to go there because I've got kids, you know, and people cried when they saw the movie, and I cry when I see the movie because it's about love, and it's about pain, and it's about fear and loss, things that parents don't want to go near. So, yeah, I was scared of it, yeah.
And it is that tough guy view of it. I mean, there's a line in there where you talk about building your armor, and
yeah.
you know, you see so many fighters and so many tough guys do it, and especially what Jeff used to do as a doorman, and you know, it's this armor you're building to protect that fear that's deep inside. And a lot of times the most aggressive guy is the most fearful guy. And it's something fascinating about Jeff Thompson and about you, James, is that 90% of our audience is male, you know, and we talk about maybe tough guy stuff, we talk about spirituality, but we have fighters on and that kind of thing. And I think this typical, either guy that is a tough guy or represents him as a tough guy, they need to see men like you on screen, or men like Jeff, talk to them that they know used to be tough guys or are tough guys. And then when they show that they have feelings and fears and pains, then they're allowed themselves to accept that. And then they can cry for the first time.
It's okay to be scared.
Yeah, it's okay to be scared.
That's one of the lines in the movie. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
And yet they can't see another individual do that. So you could just have, like I said, just a spiritual person or a Dalai Lama type. And I love the Dalai Lama. He can get on and he can say the same things Jeff says, but it lacks kind of that street credibility. And so people don't make the leap, you know, and that's what you and Jeff do so well. And when you put it on screen, it was so true, because it allows us tough guys, us boxers, us guys to be like, okay, it's James and Jeff, you know, they know what they're talking about. They've done the tough road. Now let's listen and to hear all the pains. And, you know, drinking is brought up a lot, and how that's used to mask the pain. And it's just something, everyone's had their journey there. And it gets just very deep and personal.
Yeah. And that was why it felt so great last Tuesday when we watched that film, to see like boxers and tough guys and film producers or casting, whoever they were, you know, all come out, because it touched everyone. And that, for me as an actor, is, you just think, yes, that's just the best.
And why does that role terrify you? Because when you're Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, you have some powerful scenes, powerful messages, but you know, I guess it's a short piece, it's a one-off piece. Here you have to inhibit this character for 98 minutes. Is that why it's more terrifying for you? Because you really have to go deep in there to those emotions?
It was like you were saying earlier, Brian, you know, when about the difference between film and television. You know, film, it starts off, he's a tough guy, you know, bandaging his hands, his big fat hands, you know, his bust up nose, all that stuff, you know. I think this is a tough guy. But then it goes on a journey that you don't expect, you know. It goes right to his broken heart, you know. And I think you can only do that in a movie format.
Right. And so the one thing I noticed, and I said earlier, is it seemed that you all worked together to make this piece of art. It didn't seem like the writing was overpowering. Your acting wasn't overpowering, although you could have done it that way. You could have been, this is my monologue performance and I'm going to steal the show, but you almost didn't steal the show. At least that's what I saw. You like let the writing flow through you.
Yeah.
And then as well, the filmmakers, they seemed to complement it and not overpower that whole piece. How did that all come together? And did I read that right?
You did, absolutely right, Brian. I think it because we all approached the project, it was completely collaborative. There were no stars in this, you know. There just weren't, you know. I was there to bring to life what Jeff had written, and Paul and Ludwig Shemasian were there to put that on the screen the best way they could, you know. And the makeup girl was there to do the best she could, and the costume girl and the guy that made the tea and all that. We were all the same, you know. We were all there just to do this work for 5 days. No, you know, because we loved it, because we needed to do it. And so it wasn't just the four of us, it was the 15 of us or whatever.
Right. You shot this in 5 days at Repton's, which is just this quintessentially British East End boxing gym with so much character there. But, you know, you only had 5 days. You know, you prepare. How did you prepare for this? What was it like when you're shooting? You know, how can you had some very emotional moments on screen. You're crying. How do you do that, you know, in that short period of time?
We shot it mainly chronologically.
Okay.
Like starting at the beginning and going through.
Which is easier as an actor, maybe.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, very much so. I sort of knew the cadence of the piece and where that was going to be, how much we were going to do that day or how much we were going to hope to do that day, you know. So I was sort of prepared every evening because we had to be out of there early. Because it's a working boxing club, I would go home and just go through the next day's stuff and just get myself in that place. And it was great because I could jump in the car at 4 o'clock in the morning to get there. It was, you know, it was really quiet and dark, and that journey in just put you in that place. And we just went in and got on with it. Really quiet, no noise, no big stuff. We just let's do it and that's it.
And how did you prepare for this?
What, the big emotional
stuff?
Yeah,
I'm just thinking, do you map this out? Do you think I'm going to get on page 12, I'm going to try to bring it here, I'm going to do this? Do you memorize all the lines? Do you read it 100 times?
You know, with Jeff's writing, it was all there, you know. I didn't have to impose my own cadence to it. It was written there, you know. And when it came to the really powerful stuff, I knew it was coming, but I just had to let it go and let it happen, you know. And that's the way it works when it really works. And I would like to think myself a modest sort of person. I think it's the best thing I've ever done, and I don't think I'll ever do any better. I don't think so. I don't think I'll get the opportunity to do something like that again.
When I saw that piece, I was like, this is what famous Hollywood actors get to do. They get to do these beautiful pieces of art where they get to put all of themselves into it. I'm like, it just seems like the quintessential moment for a Hollywood actor to do something like that. But it's very rare, isn't it?
Oh, hugely rare. Hugely rare. And you're right, you know, it's art. And it's not art. It's an art movie. But it's art. It's the real thing, you know. It doesn't have any, you know, we didn't have any big machine behind us. It's just people trying to do the best they can with a wonderful piece of work. And that's what I loved about it. You know, it's like great painters paint, and then business comes in and suddenly art has a monetary value. You think, wait, there's a shift change there. How can you put a monetary value on someone's talent to do something? It doesn't equate to me. And it's a bit like film as well, you know. I find it terribly sad that to the great extent, filmmaking has become a cynical exercise, a cynical money-making exercise, run by people who don't really care. They just look at the bottom line. That's what it's about, you know.
Right, because this film wouldn't have even been made, let alone made in the way it was, if there had been any ulterior motives from monetary.
We couldn't get any support.
Right.
We couldn't get any support, Brian. Nobody was interested. No British funders. No. They look at the script. I think it's a beautiful script.
It's a beautiful script.
No.
No, not with you, not with no.
No.
Okay.
No.
The
No,
script,
no.
monologue, they don't understand these points they're making.
No.
They don't understand that. Okay. And when I was...
They do now.
They do now. Okay. I was watching it, and it was classic Jeff Thompson, because Jeff can move from the minute details of wrapping a hand at boxing and then spin off to, quoting an Indian text.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And isn't it interesting that he wrote this character, as you rightly say. One minute he's talking about breaking your bones and smashing people in the ring, and then the next thing he's talking about Hindu philosophy, and you think, who is this guy? Who is this old man? You're meant to be an old boxing coach, an old boxer, but he's so erudite and beautiful. I love it.
Yeah, it was classic Thompson. And if you're a fighter or you come from that tough guy side, you can tell it was written by a guy from there, because
exactly.
the details are there.
Exactly.
And so that's what makes it real. The
Yeah,
details.
yeah.
Your son makes a couple cameos in here.
He does.
How was that, having your son involved? Was that what was that like for him and for you?
He's at university. He's a very keen amateur boxer. He's a really good, classy kid. He loves boxing. He doesn't want to turn. Well, he talks about turning pro maybe sometime. Anyway, he had a great time. He really enjoyed it. I didn't watch him doing his stuff. I didn't want to be there because you don't want your dad watching you. Even the bits he did, I thought I'll be out of here. But there were a couple of bits that were tough to do with him. I wouldn't spoil it for people that want to see the film.
Yeah.
But he had a great time. Yeah.
And did you afterwards? Did you go some places emotionally that was kind of cleansing afterwards? Did it kind of have some closure with you once you dealt with some of these big emotional pieces? Were there certain days where you were like, "This is a really hard day to get through"?
There were a couple of hard, a couple of, the last couple of days was, you say tough, emotionally it was draining. I think that's the best way to put it.
Right.
You felt as if you'd been put through an emotional ringer at the end of it. There wasn't any more to give, that was it.
Yeah.
Can't give you any more.
Right. I could see that. I guess that's where the schedule worked in your favor, because they had to shut down.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
What's the future of this film? Does it now kind of get taken to see if it has a mind of its own or a life of its own? Do you potentially do this on stage? What's next?
There's talk of doing it on stage, which we're looking at, and it will be changed to an extent. But as the film per se, it's going to do the festivals. We're going to have another screening of it before Christmas, I hope, because the reaction was so extraordinary, better than any of us could have imagined. So we're having another screening, and it'll do the festivals, and I hope it will. And that's one of the great pluses about technology today. The social media is so much more powerful than waiting for a film review in the Guardian to come out or whatever. Who reads papers?
Yeah.
And that seems to be growing and growing. There's so many more people interested and want to see it. So I think it might have its own life.
Also, with the video on demand markets and things, this is the kind of piece that I could see, living for a long time, in that way, where people could access it directly.
Yeah.
Get it from iTunes, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean,
we'd like a theatrical release. I mean, obviously we would because, to get into a few cinemas means that for some business reason it's you can market it better with Netflix or Love Film or whatever, all that sort of stuff. You can put yourself in for BAFTAs and all that sort of stuff.
Right. Could you perform that play 3-4 nights a week?
I don't know.
Jesus.
I don't know.
I mean, even one night is, that's amazing.
Well, I didn't know if I could do it on film. I don't know if I can do it on stage.
But you're willing to give it a try?
I'll give it a try.
Okay. It was a super powerful movie, James. It really spoke to me a lot.
Thank you.
I think anyone who, watches this show and loves to listen to Jeff, or even the themes that we talk about, which are, spirituality mixed in with the martial arts, mixed in with, a modern man or a tough guy trying to find his way in the world. I mean, it hit home. And like I said earlier, what I loved about it is what it let you as a viewer make your decision about it. So the scoring was really light on it, which I loved. And it was just your words, your acting, Jeff's words, and black and white filmmaking, beautifully made, intelligently made, but not overdone, and no score piped in. So you could just feel the emotions in their rawest form. And it's quite a journey you go on.
Yeah.
And people think a 98-minute monologue, well, what can happen? Well, let me tell you, a lot can happen. I didn't expect a lot of things coming on that thing. And so you guys did a very good job
I'm so glad,
of
Brian.
kind of marketing it and luring me in. And it's something that I would love to watch again. And I'd recommend it to anybody that watches London Real. And it's powerful. And I don't think that film can be made in America, James. I think it can I think that film can only be made by a Scottish actor at Repton Gym. I just think there's something about the story that rings true, and maybe it's some of the things we talked about with the Scottish spirit and the immigrant mindset and the hardworking mindset going through this tale, because it's very believable. And I just don't know if that same story in a Las Vegas gym or something would resonate.
No, maybe not. I think you're probably right.
And it makes me proud to be British when I see a film like that. I always say that kind of joking. Although my great-great-grandparents did come from the UK.
Oh, you just come home then?
Yeah, exactly. So, but it just has that thing, and it just makes you think, wow, there are some wonderful things, about the UK that are only ours. And when you guys make a piece of art like that, it's yours. It's not Hollywood's. It's not this studio. It's yours. It's something that I think people will be happy to rally around. Because it really.
I do hope so.
Gets our emotions going.
Yeah.
So, I guess you're kind of in the afterglow of this now. And do you think you'll ever do anything like this again?
No.
No?
No.
Too draining, or you just don't think you can top it?
I don't think I'll ever find anything as good as that again. I really don't. And that's fine. I'm 66 or 67, I don't know. Next year I'll be in the business 50 years. I think that's a lovely way to top it. Say, well, there you go. I'm not going to retire, but it was my mountain and I climbed it. I hope people enjoyed it. I'm very proud of it. I'm very proud of us, all the guys, and all the ladies that helped.
Right. Yeah, what a team, what a team. I always finish off the shows by asking a few questions at the end. I'm going to ask you, James.
Yeah.
If you could make a phone call to the 20-year-old James Cosmo and give that young man a bit of advice, what would you tell him?
Don't hesitate. Don't prevaricate. Strive to be happy. And don't let anything get in the way of that. Do what makes you truly happy. It's not to do with money. It's not to do with where you are. It's to find happiness deep within yourself. Go for that. And never take no for an answer. Go on that journey. You may not find it for a long time. You may never find it. But maybe you will. And that's the best.
Well said, well said. Best advice you've ever received in your life? Could be business, from acting standpoint, or just personal?
The best piece of advice. I never listened to much advice, I gotta say. I honestly can't think of anyone that gave me advice that resonated with me.
Interesting.
I've always made my own path in life and made so many mistakes, so many mistakes, but I had to make them, you know. Maybe giving advice is a thing that can steer you around things, but maybe sometimes it's best to go straight through them. And that's what I did.
What was the 20-year-old James like? Was he pretty headstrong? Was he some of what that guy was talking about in the film? Was that part of him, those early days?
Yeah, I mean, I was brought up in a working class culture, you know, a physical culture. You know, my idea of a Saturday night out was, you know, 8 pints of Guinness, go dancing and have a fight. That's, you know, that was Saturday night. That's what I loved, you know. I loved being that age. It was wonderful. It was beautiful. The girls were so lovely, and life was, even in those rough times, life was so beautiful. That's, you know, someone said, you know, it was Michel de Montaigne, the French philosopher, said that we're given a great gift, that as we grow older, we can't remember what it was like to be young, because if for 1 second we felt like we did when we were young, the rest of our life would be awful. Isn't that interesting?
That is interesting. I've never heard that.
Yeah. You know.
Last question. Advice to those young actors out there, you know, that are in their teens, maybe around 20 years old themselves right now, that, you know, they look to you. I mean, wow, I mean, you're on so many screens that they see you. But what advice do you give to them if they want to, I guess, I don't know, maybe be famous is wrong, because you might advise against that.
Yeah.
But what do you tell them as young
That's
actors?
the interesting thing, because even, especially in America, what do you want to be? I want to be a film star. You don't want to be an actor. You want to be a film star. There's a big, big difference. Being an actor is something more than being in big movies, you know. And if you really want to be in the business, if you really want to get respect, teach yourself to be an actor. Look at every part and find that person inside you and be true. Be true to that character. You know, be that character. Good or bad or whatever, be that person. And if you can learn to do that, then your performances will be great.
And for you, the Pyramid Text is one of the high points of your career. And a lot of people would look to, you know, an HBO series as the high point, you know, but you're looking to something where you acted and you created, and that's the moment for you.
I would like to be thought of as an artist, a genuine actor. That's what I am. And that's not to do with fame or being in big movies or big television series. It's not to do with that. It's about being an actor, and the privilege that actors have is to be in front of an audience, be it, you know, through film or whatever, to be in front of an audience and have the privilege to do work that can touch them in some way, to make them laugh, or to make them cry, or to make them question who they are, or question their attitudes. That's the kernel, like the golden kernel of being an actor. It doesn't happen very often, because we all do stuff that it's drivel, it's nonsense, it's a waste of time, mostly. But sometimes you get something that can just make people think, just for a moment. That's a huge privilege.
Amen. James, thank you so much for coming.
Oh, it's been a huge pleasure talking with you, Brian.
Thanks so much for opening your heart. I mean, on the screen, you know, for that film, because you just went so deep in so many ways, and thanks for telling us
bless you.
About yourself. I guess the best way would be to tweet out, and we'll send messages to Jeff and then the Shemazian brothers that you want to see this film, and that's going to move it to the next level. Hopefully a theatrical release. And I'm actually thinking I would love to see it again in December. That's what I was thinking.
Well, we'll make sure you do.
I would love to.
Make sure you do.
Fantastic work all around, James. It's I hope you don't stop making movies. That would be a travesty. So I look forward to your next project. As we say on London Real, it's about the journey. I think that's your motto as well. And I wish you all the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brian. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Take care.
what we call reality is in fact nothing more than a culturally sanctioned and linguistically reinforced hallucination.
This week on London Real, we have martial arts specialist and BAFTA-winning screenwriter, Jeff Thompson.
The ultimate fear was this fear of confrontation, so I became a nightclub doorman. You trigger the adrenaline so hard in them that all of their instinct just wants to run away.
Just because they walk away don't mean they ain't coming back.
I've had people confront me 20 years after a fight, and to them it was yesterday, and they're hugely violent individuals.
Come on, you cunt! Come on!
2 of my friends were killed in fights, and 2 of them were assassinated in their cars.
Some of us just died it better than others.
On each step of the pyramid, I wrote down a fear. Least fear at the bottom,
right.
Worst fear at the top. Then I basically just confronted those fears one by one until I'd overcome them. Writing has been more difficult for me than standing on a nightclub door with people threatening to kill me. It doesn't really matter what you are, because everything is just based on perception. It's whether where you are is where you love. If you surrender to potential, you'll become potentials. When we change perceptions, we change reality.
On Sunday, London Real presents Jeff Thompson, Conquer Your Fear.
If you can master one thing, you can master all things, because the template is the same.